All right. Welcome to Splice. Ow! Howdy. Good to see y'all back here again. We're back after Poetry Fest, post-Poetry Fest. The summer of Splice begins. We have two incredible poets here from San Diego to do a poetry party with us today. And I'm going to invite Henry Goldkamp up on stage to introduce one of them.
All right, thanks. In the spirit of our poet reading first tonight, Suzanne Stein, I wanted to do a first, unscripted, no papers, to echo some of the improvisatory foundations of several of her artistic practices and projects. I wimped out. Like the world of commedia dell'arte, Stein's work often feels a paradoxical mix of stock forms filled with nowness, and in other words, is a reminder that living in the moment can be and is an artistic approach worthy of being called craft. A refreshing reality to an MFA-obsessed poetry world that too often these days values the overwrought, the over-revised, the endless processing of fiddling the tape behind the finish line. Stein, however, sees the pause, embraces the sound of thinking, the meditative, the sound of non-thinking too, the undifference between the two, kissing dervishes, a belief in the art of gravitational suspension instead of willful suspension of disbelief. My go-to thought on Suzanne Stein, however, when I think of her, is that she's a sort of stand-up color theorist, stand-up both in the comic and admirable quality kind of way. Quote, isodiametric, very pale sky blue. Quote, word for word, soft purple. Quote, oafish ruby, to name some of the dozens of prisms shining through the skylight of Stein's skull in her book, New Sutras. It's emblematic of what I see as her foundational and inspiring technique of language as art object. Poetry is art, not literature, and given her extensive talks and writings on contemporary art, it tracks, or rather it stops the usual goings-ons in their tracks, allows us to see the world and its props in technicolor, and reminds us that we indeed have access to the dials. On the spiritually kooky canvas, one can see the poet at work cherry-picking, non-pejoratively, from ancient religious teachings, contemporary poets, so-called radical thinkers, which are then unbraided, braided again, and perhaps a bit upbraided too. I'm reminded of those like tissue paper collage things that like color your hands after you pick them up, and the craft never drying. It's glue that stays news or gets and goes everywhere it pleases, like any true poem does, at least I think. An expert experiencer of the life form deemed humanity, Stein encourages us to untether ourselves, let our little wings catch the streams of the zeitgeist, see where it takes us so as to better understand the weather. Last I checked, it's raining capital with a 100% chance of fascist policy. Whatever it is Stein has in her anti-capitalist, pro-proletariat store for us tonight, one can be certain it's in short supply anywhere else. To use a refrain of hers in New Sutras, repeat after me. In the motion of my hands. Let's give it up for Suzanne Stein.
All the liquids. Thank you, Henry. That was, I think, the most awesome intro anyone's ever given me. Thank you. That was lovely. And made me laugh. And thanks to Rodrigo and to Sean and the Splice for having us. It's really nice to be in New Orleans and to get to see like who you are and everything. And not through the lens of the internet. It's really nice to do it in person. And okay, so contrary to the now, what I'm working on over the last 5 years is I've been working on constructing a book that is out of work that was written like 15 years ago, around 15-ish years ago. And yeah, I've been working with all of the, like the abandoned, I said this to Henry, I wrote this in an email to Henry the other day, like the abandoned poems and the failed performances and the failed projects. And I've been really trying, and it's like taken 5 years and I'm still not there. But for the first time I wanted to read from that. So it's visiting another consciousness. I'm going to read from a series of letters and they'll kind of explain themselves, what they're up to, and I'll throwing in a few fragments of poetry along the way. So me that this is where it should be. And these letters are written to real people, and actually, okay. Hi, Barrett. I watched Rosemary's Baby last night because I wanted to review the scene of Ruth Gordon on the telephone in the bedroom before I wrote to you about it. Perhaps you remember the scene. The angle of the camera is low, and it remains in the hallway of the apartment instead of following Ruth Gordon into the room. As she sits on the edge of the bed to call the doctor, the camera shifts slightly, and the door jamb that is left of frame obstructs our view of her. This is a very wide shot, but we see only her left shoulder, her thigh and hip, and part of the telephone cord. The rest of the screen is the door jamb on the left, and bed and bedroom take up the other 3/4 of the frame on the right. In the 1992 documentary Visions of Light, The Art of Cinematography, the cameraman William Fracker tells us that Roman Polanski instructed him to make this shot in exactly this way, and although he could make no sense of the direction at the time, he followed it. Later, he saw Rosemary's Baby in the theater, he said, and watched as everyone in the theater, the entire audience, shifted in their seats to the right during the scene, trying to get a better view of Ms. Gordon. This anecdote came to mind yesterday when I first began this letter to you by suggesting that if I disclosed at the outset that the next letter in this series will be exceptionally filthy, pornographic, we'd lose 80% of our readers immediately to the next installment, and that would leave us here together in a moderately more private or intimate space in which I might write to you. As it happens, I'm sitting in a cafe on a bar stool looking out the plate glass windows onto Grand Avenue. Last night I had a dream about a man I've met only once, about 3 weeks ago, and now this very man is sitting at a table directly in front of me on the other side of the glass. I can see his forehead and his chin, but the middle part of his face is obscured by the lower frame of the sliding sash. This isn't the first scene in Polanski's film that's shot this way, by the way. It's the third. The first depicts the conversation between John Cassavetes and Roman Castevet, which we never hear, and which conversation is on what the entire narrative depends. Later, John takes a phone call in the bedroom in a pose that prefigures Ruth Gordon's later position in the same spot. The difference is that in the 2 earlier scenes, we're shortly allowed to see what begins out of view. In the first, John leans forward into the shot from behind the doorway, and in the second, the camera hesitates and then follows him into the bedroom. Last night, I dreamt my little dog was crossing a New York City street the way Mia Farrow as pregnant Rosemary Woodhouse did. Roman Polanski said, "Just walk into the street, Mia, nobody hits a pregnant woman." Then Lucy, my dog, was driving our old car, the '67 Dodge Dart. Lucy's a blonde terrier mix of unknown provenance, and she looked so cute with her paws on the wheel, intent on getting where she was going, wherever that was. Rosemary makes a call from the bedroom, too. Mia Farrow finds the voice on the other end of the line familiar, but is unable to place it. I, too, found the voice on the other end of the line familiar. I had a similar experience another time, Barrett, looking at a tree that grows in the median at the triadic juncture of Mission Street, Van Ness Avenue, and South Venice in San Francisco. I was sitting in the back of a taxi waiting at the light. The sensation was so deliberate and exact. Every point of the sensation was precise. I knew that tree, and it knew me. Are you superstitious, B? You might be. I held a stack of the canceled checks of Jack Spicer in my hand 2 days ago. Both nights since, I was awakened at precisely midnight when the clock radio I never used turned itself on. I said, "Getting up in the middle of the night's all right for you, Jack, but can't I claim this poem in the morning?" I swore I'd remember the sentence he gave me and put it down in this letter to you. I didn't. It's 8:59 p.m. in Oakland, friend. Friday, January 21st, 2011. Yours, S. Avoiding the avoidance of meaning, where pencils are classified as sharp or dull, as shapely lines drawn from the sharper points of pencils. From one day to the next, as I decay, my head aches, my eyes propose sleep, my notebook embarrasses me, my pen, my eyes sting, they smart. Where am I? What's gone wrong? What's happening? Does it matter? There is a protest at the university, a fee hike. Who cares? Amy, I must write a letter to every person who asks for one. I do not have to write letters in the order of my receipt of a request. The letters have been obsessed with the occult, with magic, with coincidence, with dreams, demons, ghosts, and hauntings, all things spooky. But are they so flat they have no magic of their own? I'm the only witness to this extended and uncomfortable episodic performance in duration. Your letter is the 14th of 25, which means I've just written the hinge on which this world turns and am now doubling back. That is, on reaching the heart, yesterday, I thought I might turn around and beginning now, rewrite the letters I've already written in reverse order and in the inverse. The letters should mirror each other. Your letter's companion is the letter on the other side of the hinge. You've seen Anne Maguire's film, Adventure, Poseidon, The Unsinking of My Ship, haven't you? The film starts with the final scene of the Poseidon adventure. When that scene is finished, the penultimate scene of the film begins. When the penultimate scene ends, the third to the last scene begins. And so forth until we get to the opening credits. What kind of chronology will these letters order themselves into in the end? I remember the day you and I had lunch together. You have a pretty face and a little bit of gray hair, which is surprising and charming. You are more young than most people with that amount of gray. We were having a business lunch. It is not appropriate that I tell you how pretty you are. The letters proceed under their own time. I play the letters like instruments. I do not own them and can't direct them, though occasionally I try. It's said that every letter is encoded with a desire for reply. The author of these letters does not know with what desire precisely she encodes them. She proposes a scheme that resists reply and receives none. Suzanne. Somewhere a miserable cat damning itself. My relational I, my beautiful concern, whatever. Vegetable, animal, mineral, vegetable. Rat, mold, rock, rock, paper, rat, paper, hat. The way one calls the sea wet, the way one calls the sea green, the way one calls the sea salty, the way one calls the sea open, the way one calls the sea rough, the way one calls the sea mighty, the way one calls the sea rocky, the way one calls the sea stalwart, the way one calls the sea empty, the way one calls the sea endless, the way one calls the sea stormy, the way one calls the sea deep, the way one calls the sea money. And a little sequence that does have a title, Autophotography. All from this same other consciousness of 15 years ago. 1. Stockings, Target. Lip gloss by Chanel. 10:13 a.m., one comment. Steadfast and resolute in my perching against the machine, warbling in a cubicle box thing warbling. Hence the saying, one may know how to conquer without being able to do it. Disorder postulates a perfect discipline. I simulate fear, I postulate courage. Simulated weakness postulates strength. Suzanne, known versus unknown quantities of pleasure and pain. Suzanne, the control panel is inside me. Nothing's left of the structure of the fantasy. I'm in new neurological space. Can I status update? 2. I would like to confess my sins of image, my delusion. Neither can I borrow, neither can I hedge. My breasts droop. I get demoted. I prepare another angle. Small-scale ignorance nullifying warfare, environment-altering invisible charge emission objects, crystal emanating energy field consciousness, energetic field destupefier. Who was still well? Who was already ill? Can poetry hack physics? In the stratification of the flesh market, may I suggest further development in the eat/elevate the young department? While walking along one part of the lake, I look back and see myself walking along another part of the lake previously. Poetry can do this even when time can't. A goat that gives milk, a hen that lays eggs. Core of variable volume, sub-audible soundtrack. Behind the facade of simulated rapture, I clearly love fire and fire loves me. Along the way, many of us die and many of us are taken prisoner. 3. You go to the landscape that frightens you the most and take pictures until it can't frighten you anymore. Sightless, thoughtless, hurting my information. I vowed to go, to be gone, to leave, to be in a state of having already left. Absent, otherwise, farewell, out of this place. I was gone, I went, I was, I wasn't. I washed up, waited, I was waiting to go, to be gone, to have gone away, to have left. Having left, I waited on being gone, having nothing left to wait for there and gone. Having went away, having gone away, left having gone already. Goodbye. Oh, there's somebody out there. 4. Ask for a job, get a job. Get more money, better money. Wandering about, walking, being undead. I deplore antidotes. I feel forlorn. Furloined, soft and warm. My heart's not pure, but it's dumb. It can't fight in speech for its desires as though they were rights. I thought of something. It tripled my dough. It got my dough to rise. I was doughy, rolled in it. Triple agent, triple threat, a double treat, a treatise. 2 of them, in fact. Bird and boat, boat and turd. Plop. Girls turning away, rendering cart-horse dichotomies moot. I'll fuck parts, hearts, but never wholes. I, he. The cue still hurts the ball. How fitting, the floor is filthy dirty. Come, see how beautiful is the place where I live. 5. I will make all decisions in inverse proportion to what will benefit me. I have 2 lucky dollar. I have 2 friend. I have 2 blue collar. I have 1 friend. I have a mirage. I have not, I reckon. 6. Plums in duck sauce taste quite tasty. Ducks in prune juice swim quite lazy. Patrick Swayze. I eat plums for dinner. Plum sauce, fish sauce, seltzer. Turkish plum, black mission fig. Dear Dad, I found an inchworm on the mantle. These are explicit instructions. I make my bed so I can get right in it. 7. Where the class system should break down and doesn't. The poets back home have accounts with a lot of money flowing through them to their glasses of champagne. In California, wine is important. California serves up 80% of the verdure on the New York plate. Did you know that? No wonder so-and-so will only eat steak. A moral carnivore, a principle of mistake. I failed at the budget, I failed at market, I failed to champion soul in my position. Lie in bed, deal with my fucking feelings. Faithless was how Elle described a woman she used to know. Wasn't I thus for a long time also? Dear James, my subject today is demons. Last week I think I had a visitation, or possibly I performed a small exorcism, or the idea of how to begin an exorcism, or the idea of visitation. I started this letter to you the day after this strange experience, and because I failed to complete the letter in the time that it was demanding to be written, I'm almost afraid I've spoiled my whole project. Are you superstitious? Do you know the lyrics to the Yo La Tengo song Demons? Now here's a coincidence. I heard it for the first time just now while I was walking home on my way to finish this letter to you. It goes like this. When she sleeps, she shuts out the essence of you. When you call her name, she trembles at what you might do. Daytime shiver and she might give in. Nighttime demons, you know you can't win. Sleep with demons, they lurk but they don't make a sound, but she won't get up even when they're not around. Daytime brings out the promise within. Nighttime demons, you know you can't win. I'd placed a burns for up to 3 hours, Duraflame, crackle flame fire log on the hearth at 7 p.m. Living as I do in true Oakland luxury, the fireplace is at the foot of the bed. I like to turn off all the machines and get into bed and read to the sound of the flames, and then I like to fall asleep while the dregs of the log are still crackling and casting low, flickering light on the ceiling of my bedroom. I turned out the light at 10 p.m. Sometime later, I was awakened from a deep sleep by a very loud cracking, burning, and popping sounds. I looked at the clock, 2:37 a.m. A burn for up to 3 hours fire log should by no means still be burning more than 7 hours after first setting it alight, and certainly not more strongly, more fiercely than when it began. My heart was pounding. Nothing in my room was on fire. No light was cast on the ceiling. Let me digress. Last summer, I performed a salt cleanse on my apartment. To rid a room of negative energies or possibly spirits, you can put an egg in each corner of the room or fresh, clean salt from the sea. I put sea salt in small dishes in every corner of all the rooms and left them there for 36 hours. Because I have come to believe that there is a strong, strange energy in my apartment, whether external to me or I myself, I am never sure. I thought the salt might provoke a cataclysm of disruption. I expected flying dishes, the apartment upended in the middle of the night. There are a few ghost stories in my family. Also, once I spent the night at a friend's house in the desert and was awakened in the night by the sound of someone yanking out the cutlery drawers and then slamming them in again. I thought it was her brother. In the morning, Megan's mother told me it was the ghostie, and that once he even piled the dining room chairs on top of the table while the family slept. After the 36 hours, I poured all the salt into a green plastic box with a hinged lid, washed the little dishes, and secured the box with a rubber band. Later, I took the salt to Land's End and poured it back into the sea. Nothing happened, but sometimes when I've gone away for a few days, I am sure my neighbors have come in and then gone away again from my apartment. Very slight rearrangements have taken place. What happens when I set this letter into the post, James? I've already sent one letter and another one before that. This sensation of igniting event is related to the ignition of fire in my bedroom, subsequent to the sending of letters. Back to the crackling flame. Lying there in the unstill dark, I couldn't move or get up, paralyzed with that middle of the night terror you no doubt remember, from childhood at least, even if you're secure from experiencing it as an adult. It's the sensational grip of a nightmare that wakes you and won't leave. And if someone is with you, you wake them to accompany you into or carry you back from fear. But lying alone, although I could also in that moment recall that I am an adult with some capacity for providing rational explanation of my physical or psychical experiences, and I could imagine that this might be an externalization of my night after night sleep time anxiety, I just couldn't talk myself out of my feeling of dread. I couldn't move. I lay there in the dark, breathing and listening. I remembered my mother's story of sending her own mother's ghost away by telling the ghost aloud to go, and I remembered the Zen funeral service for the poet Leslie Scalapino, where a congregation of loved ones exhorted her spirit to go. In the dark, and with much effort and no lack, but no greatness either of feeling ridiculous, I squeaked out, go, 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 go! Each go escaping my mouth, moderately more firm, incrementally more soundful. Uttering a sound into the room against the sounds of the improbable fire gave me the courage finally to sit up and look into the hearth, thinking trepidatiously, but what if I see a demon? I have never thought such a thought in my life, I must say. I'm superstitious, I salt cleanse, I believe in the sage cure, but demons and devils are the stuff of greater nonsense. Indeed, when I looked into the hearth, James, I saw a little demon. Or a triangle of the log, just exactly placed and exactly punctuated with two glowing red spots to be taken at once as successfully evoking the glowing eyes and dark face of a demon. I thought, but it's just a little demon, a weak one. And though I was frightened that if I approached the fire, I'd be confronted by a more terrible monster lurking, hiding, tricking me behind it, I picked up the iron poker and smashed the remaining log to furious, sparking, glowing, crackling bits and leapt back into bed. I turned on the bedside lamp, but there was no diminishment of the sensation of visitation in the room around me. It rose up around me, increasing my fear. I remembered that lying on the night table beside me was a copy, still unopened, of the Heart Sutra in the Red Pine translation, which my friend Sarah had given to me 3 days previous on Thanksgiving Day. I remembered that the Heart Sutra is sometimes invoked to dispel evil spirits, and grabbed it right away, opening to the sutra itself at the start of the volume, and read it quickly to myself. The mantra at the end of the sutra is familiar to me. One of my yoga teachers had us chant it every class for years. Do you know it? Gate, gate, parasamgate, bodhi swaha. Gone, gone, to the other side gone, my teacher would tell us it meant. A limiting translation perhaps, but that's no matter. I chanted it into the room 4 or 5 times, and then although the room did not feel particularly better or myself more at ease, I was able to turn my attention from the fireplace back to the book, which includes a long textual analysis with citations from a variety of learned sources of all parts of the sutra. I opened the book again at random, and my eye fell directly on this line. The sutras say, subduing demons is the place of enlightenment. Would you like to hear the passage that follows? Because you don't waver, when you look at people who don't understand their mind, you can use this to cure their illnesses. If you see dharmas outside the mind, demon realms will appear before you, and your mind will belong to demons. How can you save others then? The sutras say, if you can't cure your own illness, how can you cure others? Even if you cure your karmic attachment to an illusory body, you still won't leave the demon realm. You will still fear birth and death and won't be able to escape the wheel of existence. Instead, you leave one life for another and take turns wronging each other. The Tathagata appeared in the world to save those who are completely lost and to help them awaken to their own mind. When you chant this mantra, don't give rise to deluded thoughts. This is how you should uphold it. Then I turned to the beginning of the book again and read the sutra out loud. You know, James, I'm no Buddhist. I don't know how much I'd like to escape the wheel of existence, as I like it a lot around here and wouldn't mind coming back, or at least having another go at another world which is like this one, but where one can always turn both to and from all the other ones again and again forever. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, life is good. Your status updates let me know that you quite enjoy living yourself, and I remember very well your performance as Per Ubu and how rich it is to have known you then and to laugh a lot at your jokes, seeing you on the internet and knowing you, however distantly now. I read for a while after that, for the first 30 or 40 pages of the text perhaps, and then I turned out the light and lay on my left side, still feeling frightened and unasleep and strange. I thought about form is emptiness, emptiness is form is not separate from form is not separate from emptiness, whatever is form is emptiness, whatever is emptiness is form. And then I had the sensation of understanding sort of in a very simple way, something about this illusion of existence, which is I could feel myself to exist and to simultaneously not exist, given the total separation of all the elements of my body, the illusion of my body holding together as a thing. This was a more pleasant sensation than I might have expected. A wild holding together and flying apart of cells or atoms of cells, particles flying apart, and my thinking, breathing mind hovering between all the parts. Finally, I think I fell asleep, and when I woke up again in the morning or just a few hours later, I felt very strangely disoriented, and hazy is maybe the word for it. I walked along Grand Avenue, around Lake Merritt, towards the BART train, as I do most mornings, and had the feeling while looking at the trees how immaterial they were, solid in appearance only and not in fact, fluid temporary accretions of energy and matter. The whole day felt very dazzling and strange, and I sat in my cubicle and performed tasks and decided I would put all this in my letter to you. When I got home that evening, I was afraid to go into my bedroom. I had planned to lie in bed with my laptop and get the letter quickly written and mailed off to you. But instead, I kept my coat on and sat for several hours in the study, which is actually a dining room or a living room and is also, in fact, the only other room in my apartment, aside from the kitchen and toilet. With my back against the wall that adjoins the study to the bedroom, In the part of the room that is closest to the fireplace, that is, I had my back to the hearth, protected by a wall, I sat at my desk. It was dark in the bedroom. I again thought of Leslie, and again I felt the necessary exhortation of go, 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 and summoned the will to chant the mantra. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhi swaha, which, by the by, I also just chanted while typing it out, sitting here in this cafe as the sun is starting to set on the other side of the lake, well before 5 p.m. on a cold gray afternoon. I chanted the mantra 3 times and went into the bedroom and turned on the light. My apartment has felt quite fine since then. Suzanne. One little post-reading picture of you all, since I didn't do it before.
Let's keep it going for Suzanne Stein. Okay. So Mark Wallace is the author and editor of 15 books of fiction, poetry, and essays. His most recent novel, Crab, was published in 2017 by Submodern Books. Other recent publications include Haze, Essays, Poems, and Prose, and a book-length prose poem, Notes from the Center on Public Policy, and a novel, The Quarry and the Lot. Temporary Worker Rides a Subway won the 2002 Gertrude Stein Poetry Award and was published by Green Integer Books. His critical articles and reviews have appeared in numerous publications, and he has co-edited 2 essay collections, Telling It Slant, Avant-Garde Poetics of the 1990s, and A Poetics of Criticism. The ancient Greeks had multiple conceptions of what we now call truth. Among those was kairos, the conscious development of a persistent attentiveness to the most providential time to do things. And this calibration of the do what when between the observer and the observed is a flaneur poet's principal mission. That's what the wandering about town is all about. That's what the search for coveted spots, vantage points is all about. That's what the search, but it's not just about observing, but orchestrating, turning the chaos of whens into a fugue of nows. A flaneur's craft is not truth as fact, what the Greeks called aletheia, nor even an unveiling of essence, aletheus, but truth is ripe collision. The exact pressure of an automobile ignition switch turning in sync with a stranger's glance on a two-way street, the fading streaks of a 747 jet articulating crashing waves on a rock and counterpoint to seals barking. But that's the naturalist or elegiac flaneur. And then there's the material social flaneur like Mark Wallace, who've poetically trained themselves for decades to see undergirding connections between seemingly mundane objects or human activities and the larger consequences of history and motion. Not only does Mark break through what Marxists called commodity fetishism, the inability to grasp underlying labor relations in produced objects, but he goes much further. He decodes literal nationalisms that are embedded into the most innocent seeming occurrences and interactions in urban landscapes. It's the strangest and coolest thing. He quirks the official jargons that rule our lives, telling them slant so that we can begin to actually see and hear ideological phenomenon on a whole new level. In fact, Mark Wallace and Stephen Marx popularized the term telling it slant through their book, Telling It Slant, Avant-Garde Poetics of the 1990s, an anthology of critical poetic essays by the same name. I especially loved that book because it pushed back against the crude neo-objectivist impulses that were crowding innovative poetries of that time. They argued for a new kind of accuracy in writing, one in which referential tangentiality, even runaway tangentiality, is to be foregrounded. Mark soon thereafter developed the aesthetic even further by way of another book titled The Haze. This time the focus shifted to the incommensurability of any telling in any way. Back in the day, we'd even say, how much haze is such and such a poet working with? It was about doses of the haze. That is, how far into language did one think that capitalism had snuck into, and how complicit has, in what Charles Bernstein named official verse culture, OVC, how long had that been acting as an immune response to poetry struggling to contend with new realities, and thus alternate potentialities, scaling all the way from linguistics to social anthropology. And now, in 2025, as the geopolitical tectonic plates are creaking into actual political and thus cultural earthquakes, few poets are as prepared as Mark Wallace to navigate our times. His, listen up, 24-volume, with a possible 25th book, epic poem, The End of America, is arriving in the sense of kairos, at the most providential time, just in time to help us to recalibrate our own investigations into the matter, the winding down, flaming out of the US empire, along with its downstream cultural effects. Court poets, gobbling up prizes and appointments, policing what's been acceptable at our poetic borders. I'm venturing to say easily that The End of America is and will be one of the most consequential books written by an American poet in the first quarter of the 21st century. And finally, I want to reiterate the prime directive of the Splice series. We do this so that you all present here can personally engage with all of the poets we get into town, to learn from them and be challenged by them. And there's no better way to start than to get their books. Right over here. Okay, let's please give a New Orleans style welcome to the one and only Mark Wallace.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm really glad to all see you. It's fun to be back in New Orleans, where I've been several times. I love it here. I love the people I know here. It's great to be in your company again. I'm going to read from a couple of different manuscripts this evening, mostly from my multi-part series that Rodrigo was talking about, The End of America. I'm going to start by reading some sections from the 18th book of The End of America, and then at the end, some of the pieces that I've been writing most recently that were actually just written this fall. And except for Suzanne and Rodrigo, in reading them today, no one has seen these poems, no one has heard these poems. You are the first people who will have heard them. So this is the first set part that was from The End of America 18. And I'm reading from these poems because they have suddenly, I think, become pertinent again. Not that they stopped being pertinent, but they were written in the spring of 2016, a time that we are oddly, suddenly re-experiencing again. And so I'll just begin with a poem that is called January 20th. January 20th, 2016, of course. Up is down. These warplanes drop flowers on cities for all. The empty seats are filled. The living are long dead. I love you when my gun blows your forehead wide. Whatever I say comes out of your mouth. It's a sunny day in this cloud-thick rain when I heal you with this boot to your face. I look into a camera and say what is not so, and it is so. You millions of people protesting add up to precisely no one. One of the things I'd like to say about, thank you. One of the things I'd like to say about that poem and the personage who prompted it is that we often talk about that person as telling lies, and I think that that's true, but I think there's something we need more that we need to understand about that rhetoric, which is that what he says is the opposite of what is true, which is not exactly the same as the whole range of lies. So if something is said, you know that the opposite is what is really the case. And this is actually a continuous process in the rhetoric of this person that we are now seeing again, nearly a decade later. Here's another short poem. The Environmental Protection Agency head hates environmental protection.
The National Education Agency head hates education. The head of Housing and Urban Development hates housing and urban development. The Ethics Committee head hates ethics. The National Endowment of the Arts head hates art. The Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms head loves alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Am I not in
We want to do the mic.
Okay, just tell me how to do it. It's another poem from this series. Things start to open out a little bit.
Consider the processing and reshaping instrument that is the body itself on a street corner against a lamppost. The city starts with little rocks arranged in a square and a pole covered in stickers and advertising, music shows gone, into the texture that is the past. Contribution to the present that the eyes, the nose, the ears, the fingers take from surfaces, creviced, folded. The mind translates all that into perceptions, thoughts, emotions. Each word then chooses its dervish of momentary event. The dead, the afternoon strollers, Count Basie on the cafe radio, sounding out across the street. We take in so much, it's a wonder it doesn't crush the body. And when it does, the words give, mended, splintered, angled into the wavering afternoon, sensation and response, ongoing even when they seem to be finished.
Just real quick.
When nothing is true, everything is a lie. You won't know the difference. The emperor's new naked will to power. The distance between a yellow fence flattened brightly by sun on a quiet afternoon street and the gunshot news blipping on media screens, death in Fort Lauderdale, Planned Parenthood defunded, healthcare benefits denied, a lazy clarinet blowing a riverside lilt in the shop's calm air, president installed by menacing fiat and voter suppression, the reflection of light through a water glass. Hardly a surprise. My brain seems to have no past or future. The nuances of day bottled in a public information loop that ignores everything not itself, ignores every creased hand, every tight forehead. So I read this, first time I read this poem, a well-known East Coast poet who I'm not going to tell you who it is unless I've had too much to drink later, but said to me afterwards, that poem is so depressing that if I thought like that, I'd have to commit suicide. Which, was a startling thing to say, but it's also startled me because I thought that this poem was kind of optimistic. And I actually do, but I guess I can see what the person was saying, so I'll let you, what I'm saying, I'll let you decide. Yeah. Who knows? If real news is the fact of rich people plundering the poor even in dreams, then this street of puddled water splashing up at the feet of people with nowhere indoors to go is the basis on which the vacation city builds its high-rise fantasy of ease. San Diego, by the way. Awareness that politics preserves the constant saying that not much reveals more than struggle does helps me walk along while laughing faces pass, raincoats, knit sweaters, tilted hats, shoulders drawn up in a wind. Nothing less than experience as it presents itself calls for acknowledgement, one unisolated instant, then another. There's no way to avoid giving back the particles of a body to the air. Hoarding doesn't prevent loss. That sucking sound, the breath that cannot draw itself, is all the grasping to control the streets, the buildings, the trees, the sky, happening at once, which has never saved even one person from death. Surely the body is made of stranger things than politics can steal. The tangled residue of stars, the plastic bag and orange peels I kick past the bridge, flaming nerves splayed across ancient and forgotten avenues, the stomach-heavy goodbye to others that always feels a limit on anyone's remaining days. I see now I really did believe that the stories of languages breaking open the embedded money source were the victory of changing grandeur over the paltry measured ties misnamed time. I could never believe that people meant the counting, the stacking, the definitions, the dividing, that those could be more than misunderstanding, even when burned in iron. The world is simply not anything any of us say of it. Our names are strange delusions, pulling us back from a brink we are always falling through. It has no shape, no words. It is not a brink. We are not anyone. There is no falling. And the last poem I'm going to read from this first set of poems, all written in spring 2016, happened. I wrote during a literary festival and conference that happened at Joshua Tree in the desert. It was called Desert Poetry Fest. I can't remember what it was called. And at one of the events, poet and theorist Jen Scapitone, who's been mentioned tonight somewhere, I can't remember where, asked us to run through a sequence where we were out in Joshua Tree, really out past the town and out in the desert. And she asked us to imagine what this place that we were in had been like 100 years earlier and what it would be like 100 years from now. And so this is the poem I came up with. One 15-foot RV sleeper. Caution. High pressure gas pipeline. One fallen white tree trunk, brown flaking bark on top. 6 people walk the electric wire edged dirt trail. 100 years ago, unmarked scrub brush all around. In the distance, 3 wooden mine sheds spread around the small, deep pit. The miners dispersed. There's nothing else but cacti and animal life too small and quick to be seen by human eyes, even if there were some. Unlike 200 years later, the buried refuse heap and the private toll highway bringing high-priced tour groups to the quiet desert landscape corporate park. Electronic fences underground marking company boundaries. When story time ends for now, we quit and wander back into our own turbulent day.
So that's from the first set.
I'm going to change gears here just a little bit for this middle piece. As a few of you know, I actually just had a new book come out this week, just a couple of days ago. It's a play co-authored by me and James Sherry, a poet, an essayist in New York City, who's also the publisher owner of Roof Books. It's so new I don't even have copies of it. You know, I haven't even seen it myself, but I know it's out, and because a few people have it. James was like, you gotta let people know about it. So I'm just gonna read one scene from this play. The play is called The Rapture, and the basic plot, which is utterly ridiculous, but that's part of the point, is that Jesus has returned to earth. And a lot of people really want in on that action. And as you can imagine, there's a great deal of struggle over who's gonna get Jesus, on their side. The model of these plays are very consciously modeled on medieval morality plays, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, even earlier in some cases, which were sort of, they called them morality plays because the people weren't characters. They didn't have the idea of characterization actually so much, but they expressed ideas or social positions or fundamental realities that and they were very, very satirical, often quite rowdily satirical. And as Henry we were talking about last night, one of the things about those morality plays was you could say any outrageous thing as long as underlying the play ultimately was a pious point of view. Right, so as long as you were still religious, you could say anything, right? But if you weren't, now our play does not actually turn out so religious as all that, as you might imagine. Anyway, this is just to give you an example of what goes on in The Rapture. This is Act 1, Scene 4. Corporate leaders sell Tulsa to Russia. The photo should be a signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement or some other treaty of that kind. There are 4 characters. A CEO, a Russian oligarch, the mayor of Tulsa, and a sergeant. Mayor of Tulsa. Jesus says, go, sell what you have. Gentlemen, we folks weren't managing our people and property effectively here in Tulsa. Tax income was down 20%. Home foreclosures up 8, crime up 10. Democrats want social programs, too expensive. Republicans lowered taxes on the upper brackets, and retail sales fell. But this new opportunity will make our town roar. We should have leased you Tulsa years ago. CEO. Tulsa needs a streamlined economy. Cities can't be responsible for too many poor citizens, and the government of Tulsa consistently operates at a loss. Today's new US-Russia pilot program leases cities for 99 years to our northeastern neighbor. You Russians know how to manage populations. I'm sure you can reform the city without all those nasty human rights that make US cities so expensive. Russian oligarch. Mr. Mayor, or shall I call you Grand Duke of the Greater Tulsa of Russia? I'm so happy you found a vehicle to fit your new title. I'm sure you'll help us run this city, assuring all Tulsa citizens have, and know, smiles, their place. Hold on. We hear the work camps are up and running, and that unemployment is now practically zero. Mayor, we here in Tulsa are ready for new trends, half corporate state, half work camp. I'm sure we'll be squeezing the best from everyone. Russian oligarch. Mr. Mayor, of course. Even the poorest citizens will have clear roles with Tulsa in our hands. Sergeant enters and salutes in the new way. Mr. Mayor, the work camps are full. We need more farmers to feed the workers. The mayor frowns annoyed. Farmers? Yeah, here in Oklahoma, we plowed them under during the Dust Bowl. I hear some big farmers are going to the big Jesus rally this weekend down at Jesus Alogo. Maybe we can talk to them there? CEO. A huge bash, I hear. But I also hear there's going to be a protest. Russian oligarch. Jesus saves us from worker complaints, poor people, and most activists. As long as he leaves those lovely loopholes in his morality, we can deal with a few meddlesome lefties. CEO, a few protesters reassure me that I'm doing my job. So that is Act 1, Scene 4, The Rapture by James Sherry and Mark Wallace, now available on Blazebox Books and coming shortly to other locations online. So just a little bit more, I can't remember what I said earlier. The End of America, which is this long poem in multiple parts that I've been working on for nearly 20 years now, was begun when I moved from the East Coast, Washington, D.C., where I was born and raised, to Southern California, Carlsbad, California, and began a new job there in an environment that was completely different from the environment that I had lived in my whole life. Although I had family in Southern California, would see them occasionally, but it's not a place that I had lived. The End of America began in my beginning to try to explore the what I call the psychogeographical conditions of Southern California, including, geography as a field these days includes anthropology, sociology, a variety of analysis points, and psychology, right, is all relevant to the basic idea, which is what is the effect of place on human consciousness and the structure of human societies. So that's the project I've been working on for many years. On a time off for research this fall, Suzanne and I went on a long trip across various parts of the western United States to key spots in the history of American westward expansion, places that I was going because these are places that led into the creation of California and Southern California as we know it. Like how did all this, most of it's been about California, not all of it, most of it, and I wanted to go outside that and sort of see things channeling through. What I was also explaining to Rodrigo about these poems, which are very much poems of space and location, and which had to be written when I was in those places, right? And a time or two I couldn't do this because you can't just sit down right in the middle of the desert and write a poem on the sand. But mostly I tried to do it pretty close to where I was. So they're site-specific poems. They have to be in that particular place. The thing I was saying to Rodrigo is, we have a lot of poems. Poems are written in the present. People are talking about things that are writing in the present. And then there's a whole history of the historical poem, right, where people write about the events of the past. And I'm not quite doing either of those things. In these poems, I'm writing very much from the present, but I'm also looking at the way the past is actually impinging, like literally on the physical present of the place that's right in front of me, if that makes any sense. So it's like where does the past, how is the past emerging into these present moment spots where I happen to be? I'll read just a few poems from here to give you the sense of it. So five or six of them. This first poem was written at the Golden Spike National Monument, which is the spot where the transcontinental railroad that crossed the United States, the final nail was hammered in so that the train finally went all the way across the United States for the first time. It's a sort of famous American story that people sort of know, but most of us don't actually know where it happened, right? It happens in a field with some mountains nearby about 20 miles east of Salt Lake City, Utah, near the edge of the Salt Lake. And so that's, so Golden Spike National Monument is there to historicize that, and this is where this first poem takes place. Two red and blue working imitation train engines face each other against a backdrop of hills covered in tall yellow grass on an imitation working train track where the legendary Golden Spike was hammered home September 10th, 1869, after 8 Chinese workers laid the final rail of the track connecting the Union Pacific and Central Pacific railroads. Rows of empty chairs sitting outside look across at the steaming engines on a cool afternoon while people wander past, some holding maps or guides. Elderly men, families with children, teenagers, each giving their own kinds of attention to the exhibits and plaques, movies, and wall texts. Chinese workers mostly, 80%, along with black men, the Irish, Mormons, and Civil War veterans, built a national narrative from ground into legend. One that decimated indigenous tribes, wiped out buffalo, and, quote, ended the American frontier, according to the Golden Spike National Monument Visitor Center instructional movie. 20 miles away, Robert Smithson's spiral jetty winds the landscape around a spiral of black rocks, turning in on itself. People want a thing to be somewhere, and there it is. And then a story lays itself over hills, the wind blowing ghostly, a flag flapping between ceremonial trains as afternoon slips into evening. Fort Bridger, Wyoming was the single largest and most significant fort on the westward expansion trail. It is on the western edge of Wyoming, some distance over the mountains from Salt Lake City. It's played a large role in American history. There were times when thousands of people were passing through there in a day. It has recently been at the center of a Netflix TV show, which is just a total violence fest that, of course, presents inaccurate history in every direction, but nobody's there for that, called American Primeval. A lot of it takes place in and around Fort Bridger. Anyway, but this poem also takes place in Fort Bridger. No one passes through Fort Bridger. Maybe a ghost in the officers' quarters, some groups of children on buses from nearby schools, a few pair of tourists walking the grounds. No one passes through looking for goods to trade, land to own, provisions for a journey west towards the Utah mountains. No one calls for the US Army to pass through and defeat Mormon rebels who never quite decided to rebel, to make deals with native tribes and later break them. No one passes through Fort Bridger with its autumn yellow-leaved trees and stands of beech and pine, its stream through the barracks that soldiers were often not allowed to cross. The commanding officer's house became a hotel and was taken down and moved, taken down and returned to the fort that no one passes through. No one passes through Fort Bridger. Even the highway has moved further north. A group of 1830s replica cabins that no one sleeps in huddle empty nearby, not waiting for fishermen or rafters who used to try the small rivers, sometimes full with water. The Bridgers, owner of a trading post, are gone. The Vasquez family of owners, gone. The Carters, who owned the biggest post, gone. No one passes through in search of a site for meeting. No one passes through Fort Bridger, except the occasional magpie perching on a fence, one or two rabbits, a woman locking a bike by a cabin and loading her car with a black and white dog. Many creatures pass through Fort Bridger, where prisoners once found it easy to escape. Sounds of birds pass through the trees. Cars and trucks hum by to the north on the hidden highway. No one passes through Fort Bridger, seeking a refuge from danger. Fort Bridger is quiet, will close next week for winter. No one is passing through Fort Bridger. Its time of fame recorded on plaques, its gates already shut for the long cold when no one passes through along a trail to unknown hills and futures. Devil's Gate, Wyoming is one of the fascinating places that nobody knows about. You got to see it. If you've never heard of it, you've probably never heard of it. It plays an important role in American history, and it's just a remarkable place with some incredible things that happen there. The wind blows up high overnight in western Wyoming. A severe fire red flag warning seems appropriate for driving to Devil's Gate, where a beast with enormous tusks who prevented all hunting and fishing nearby once ripped a hole in a mountain after an arrow attack, according to the state government sign that claims it's telling a legend, a native legend, in a place where no animals ever had tusks. The rocks rear up, black and square, above the meandering Sweetwater River. Winds gust through grass and low pines that swoop back and forth. Pioneers moving west would camp by the landmark and river, reprovisioning themselves for crossing the drier miles west towards Utah and farther. In 1997, the Mormon Church bought up the land near the river and built an imitation of the Sun Valley Ranch that had been there more than a century. Visitors are greeted by Mormon elders on walks across the ranch towards Devil's Gate Gap. It has been a place of monsters, of hail, of Mormon pilgrims walking with handcarts, of government signage, a place near which people died in hot sun or heavy snow. The black boulders, calm low river, tall grass and muddy banks framed a place that giants were said to watch, that people spoke of as beautiful or fearful, where records were made of those who needed it, a mysterious gateway between different worlds, where guides in white hats today try to help or convert visitors on a terrain which has sustained people for 12,000 years, now become a monument to necessity's entrepreneurs. Florence, Nebraska is now actually just part of the city of Omaha, but it is also the oldest city settlement of whites in Nebraska territory. Some towns are most known for who died in them. Florence, now part of Omaha, became in 1846 the first white settlement in Nebraska territory, when Mormons built a home against a winter they couldn't all withstand. More than 350 dying before spring. A monument to them stands on the top of a hill now west of the main highway through town, their names forged in metal on a plaque, beside a statue of two people huddling with fortitude or helplessness. Interpretation seems allowed. Near the front of the Winter Quarters Cemetery, where a woman asks me how to get into the Mormon Trail Center across the road, blocked by construction. I tell her I don't know. She turns to ask a groundskeeper digging a hole who says, "Don't ask me, I'm just digging a hole." Down the hill stands the remade old brick Bank of Florence, first built in the 1850s, nearly a decade after the first Mormons had gone west. In those same 1850s, the people of Florence were once accused of trying, quote, to delude people that it was a city. And attempts to move the territorial legislature there bogged quickly into chaos. From Florence Park with its trees and benches and small monuments celebrating the cemetery up the hill, Florence stretches north and south along the main highway, a small restaurant, a small grocery, a traffic light with quite a few cars going past. A series of actions make a place, shape its deaths and lives, its past dramatic scenes. small matters at best to current residents, events which someone could live here forever and not really care very much about. All those people dying of sickness, starving and freezing to death, and the rest going away west, some whose descendants came back more than a century later to build a temple on a hill and a parking lot beside a graveyard, far enough off the main highway that only the few modern-day pilgrims go there, or someone like me, looking for a poem among historical scraps and watching a Thursday morning garbage collection truck grind on its gears as it drives past me up the hill. Yeah, you know, I knew we were going to Nebraska. So I started following Nebraska football in the months before the trip. We got to follow. If you're going to Nebraska, you got to follow the Cornhuskers, and it turns out to be true. Here we go. So I'm like, I got to go. I didn't go to the stadium, but I'm like, I got to go to a place in Omaha where everybody's watching the game. I mean, I got to watch with the Cornhuskers fans, right? You know what I mean? That's it, right? On a fall Saturday in Nebraska, a lot of people can be found watching Cornhusker football. Go Big Red signs hung in windows, painted on buildings. A hot wind blows fiercely down the mainly empty streets of downtown Omaha. Inside the sports bar, people jam together at tables or at the bar. Beer and sandwiches and fries wheel fast around the room in the hands of calm-faced waitresses. TVs line the bar, the walls, some as tall as a man and twice as wide. People bang hands on tables in time with the drums of the college band on TV. Go Big Red, shouts rise up when the team scores a touchdown after multiple awkward plays, penalties, dropped passes, interceptions. Two above average college teams on an average hot fall Saturday. Only one team is the most loved team in a state stretching west hundreds of miles. Outside at halftime, the only sound is the high, hot wind, until three women pass me as I go towards the metered parking lot. Wait, one says as they reach the door of 80s Bar and Grill. I think I forgot my credit card. And I think I have just two more poems. So thank you for bearing with me. I lost track of time, I don't know. Here we go. This poem is set in Kansas City at a Penn Valley Park, which is a park on a hill in Kansas City where there are a lot of statues. And this poem is written right next to the subject that you, in the first line, here. The statue named Pioneer Mother stands at the highest hill point in Penn Valley Park and commemorates the spirits of mothers who came before all else commemorated nearby. Union Park Cemetery, with its remembrance of Missouri's Confederate dead, a curious contradiction there. The hiker nearby who stands for soldiers in Spain, the Philippines, China. The lofty World War I tower and museum with memorabilia for those who died and who lived and are now dead too. Several miles away at 18th and Vine, where Kansas City Jazz was born, one building has two museums for jazz and Negro League baseball. American art's growing fast in 1927 when the Pioneer Mother statue was built. Whether legacies run uphill or down towards other legacies, the quiet grounds of Penn Valley Park say nothing in the dropping temperature of late afternoon. Surrounded by tall grass waving in the wind, the Pioneer Mother statue announces its poetry in segments on all four sides. Whither thou go, I will go. Whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people. and thy God, my God. 2 walking men lead the woman on a horse. Pioneer mothers are followers too, it seems, led by a masculine vision that slopes downhill into war after war. The woman stares ahead at something not there to be seen, something that doesn't exist yet, lying out down the hill somewhere where now stand freeways, block-long buildings, high-rises, and a red electrical tower, people in cars or trains, going places she seems to long for. She stares at what maybe no one imagines. This is a poem about a place that is American. American, yeah. The land around it is so flat that a driver going west won't see where Dodge City might be. Boot Hill rises up maybe 100 feet above the plain, the town streets on the slightly higher ground just north. Odor of cow shit like, quote, the smell of money, as a t-shirt says. From Boot Hill, people can see if the Arkansas River might rise, or if any other people of whatever affiliation, enemies were many, an exhibit exclaims, might be moving forward across the usually wind-blown grass. Water runs down from Boot Hill Cemetery, which keeps drier the graves of the 30 or so murdered people once buried there. Some still are. According to legend, still wearing the boots that gave the cemetery its name. Boot Hill might be the main symbol of the Western Kansas history of lawful lawlessness and lawless law, of its most famous citizens, all of them dead long ago. A town can enter a nation's consciousness and become a small place of nothing extraordinary. Homes and restaurants, a few stores, miles of highway business along Wyatt Earp Avenue, plenty of steaks and burgers for all. The buffalo brought many people here to shoot the animals down. Then longhorn steel and their smell helped make it, quote, the queen of the cow towns. All my life, I've wanted to go to Dodge City, where other people went to bring civilization or leave it behind, to make dollars any way possible, to build up a country and its legends on a long, flat land impossible to see from a distance, to tell the stories on TV and movies that will be watched in reruns for decades about what it means to be a sheriff or need one, to have a gun in your hand, to tame an idea of wilderness until it reflects in dreams that claim they own forever your face, your finger below it, always on the trigger. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here, and really nice to be able to have this reading for all of you. Now, are we supposed to come up here and stand, Suzanne? Is that what you want to tell? Guys, can you tell us to stand up here, or no? We'll get you some. Oh, later?
There will be photos.
Oh, later, okay. All right, never mind then. Thank you.
Keep it going for Margaret Suzanne. Thank y'all so much for coming out. Hang out, buy a book, buy 2 books, 3 books, 4 books. Trades are available. Any kind of communist activity is appreciated here. Please come to our next Splice, June 14th. It'll be sweaty. You'll be ready. See y'all next time. Thank you for coming.